Hello. Hello, everyone. Okay, great. Now it comes. All right. Next page. Next, please. Okay. I will continue. Due to COVID-19 this year, greenhouse gas emission is expected to be reduced by about 8% globally. This is to return to the 2010 level, which is as large as the combined total of all previous reduction since the end of World War II, according to the IEA, International Energy Agency. However, this should be viewed as a temporary phenomenon. When the pandemic is over, each government will take strong measures such as deregulation to stimulate the economy. In the past, the 2008 financial crisis that started with the Lehman Brothers incident brought a contraction of the real economy and temporarily reduced global greenhouse gas emissions. But from 2010 and on, greenhouse gas emissions increased more rapidly due to the rebound effect. So next. So keep in mind that climate change, which is an even bigger opponent than COVID-19, is still waiting. There is a vaccine for COVID-19, but there isn't one for climate change. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, as an introduction, I would like to talk about challenges of the sustainability of the Earth, so-called planetary boundary crisis. We are facing a crisis of the planetary boundaries. This diagram was, which was designed by Australian and Swedish scientists, shows 9 categories of risk. 3 areas already transgressed the boundaries and must be tackled without hesitation. Those areas marked in red are climate change, nitrogen cycle, and biodiversity loss. This is a clear sign of how our human activities have pushed the health of the planet and what we have to respond to urgently. Okay, next, please. Yes, the Earth is burning. The Earth keeps breaking the temperature record every year. It is not a matter of polar bear, but a matter of human survival. Next, please. So there are currently many challenges associated with climate change. This year, 2020, Asia alone also suffered through many days of extreme weather. In China, 63 million people were displaced due to severe weather. And in Korea, it rained for 28 days consecutively, which was the longest in nation's history. Japan suffered from Haisen typhoon, which had the fastest instantaneous wind speed in history. Australia, wildfires have burned down a land twice the size of South Korea. It's serious, right? Next, please. So although the world is making efforts to tackle climate change, the use of fossil fuels continue to increase. As you can see in the graph, over the past 60 years, oil, coal, and gas have kept rising, while the pace of growth in the development and the use of new and renewable energy is slow, even when considering the trend of global energy use. Next, please. On the other hand, the reduction targets submitted by the UN member states around the world are not enough to be blocked within 2 degrees Celsius. And the gap between NDC You are familiar with NDC, right? NDC means national targets submitted to the United Nations by individual member states. And the 2-degree target is widening, as you see. And then in case of 1.5 degrees target, this green line, the gap is more widening. Okay, next, please. So to address this, governments are setting new goals, and NGOs and investors are exercising pressure to governments and companies. The first issue is the long-term goals due by 2050 under the 2015 Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement requires countries to submit long-term goals by the end of this year. It is a so-called long-term low-carbon emission development strategy, LEDS in short. Accordingly, countries are analyzing and setting goals on how to set long-term goals. Next, please. At the United Nations General Assembly last September, Chinese President Xi Jinping made an unexpected speech. It was an announcement that China will achieve net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2060. You know, well, the net zero emission is maximal reduction first, and the inevitable part is offset by planting trees or capturing carbon dioxide, etc. Of course, the goal is targeted for 40 years from today in China, and although there is no detailed plan yet, it clearly exceeded expectations. This means China will shut down actually most of coal power plants by 2060, which amounts to about 1,000 gigawatt coal power plants plus 250 gigawatt coal power plants under construction. This is 40 times capacity of Korea's coal power plants. And Prime Minister Suga of Japan also declared new goal to reach net zero on October 26. In addition to Asian countries, about 110 countries, including Europe and the United States, have already declared goals to reach net zero according to the UN announcement. Now net zero has become mainstream. That's Korea's long-term goal. 2 days after Japan's announcement, President Moon also declared net zero at the National Assembly. This was very timely as it expressed the position of the Republic of Korea that will not be an exception to the international mega trend. But it shouldn't be limited to just a declaration and should have a new plate to achieve it. It requires a breakthrough level of change, not the old BAU, business as usual approach. Just a few days ago, following the net zero declaration, our government announced 2050 carbon neutral implementation strategy. So according to this strategy, I think many detailed plans will be clarified in the future. Next, please. Companies also join net zero. June 5th every year, June 5th is World Environment Day set by the United Nations. This year, the UN Race to Zero campaign was held on this day with over 1,000 companies and 449 cities participating. Global oil refineries such as Total, BP, and Shell also participated. It is not easy to task for energy companies to join net zero. The participation of global companies has been gradually expanding, right? Okay, next, please. Climate change is a major concern for investors as well. These days, non-financial information, such as ESG, environmental, social, and governance, is becoming more and more important to stakeholders, shareholders, than financial information. Financial information means profit and loss. For example, how much money the company earned this year and how much this company will earn next year, for example. And the ESG means what kind of activities the company has undertaken in terms of environmental, social, and governance perspectives. Recently, 377 global companies were surveyed on ESG. 79% of the companies answered that ESG-related questions from investors increased, and 64% said that they would improve ESG-related information. The demands from investors for ESG are increasing. Since ESG is a huge issue, I will focus on mainly environmental issues out of ESG, 3 dimensions. Next, please. Workers and labor unions are also calling for stronger measures against the company's climate change policy. Amazon workers have officially criticized Amazon's climate change policy. And CEO Jeff Bezos, who is the richest man in the world, right? Recently donated $10 billion US dollars climate change fund. In Korean, 11조 won, 10 billion US dollars, reflecting employees' pressure. Google also decided to stop the AI and cloud services related to fossil fuels. Microsoft announced in January of this year that it would achieve carbon negativity. Carbon neutral is not enough. Carbon negativity by 2030 and eliminate all carbon emissions emitted since the company was founded in 1975 by 2050. To this end, it has created $1 billion US dollars innovation fund to be invested in related technologies such as carbon reduction, removal, and storage. Next, please. This picture dramatically shows how the interest of investors has changed. The world's largest solar and wind power generator, the name of is Next Era Energy, has surpassed ExxonMobil in stock market value, reflecting investors' interest on a changing energy system and an uncertain outlook for oil demand. Next Era Energy, a Florida-based utility and power producer, had a market capitalization of $138.6 billion US dollars in last October. In 2011, 10 years ago, the left side of this graph, Next Era could not be compared with ExxonMobil in stock value size. But, only 10 years after, now it surpassed ExxonMobil. Okay, next, please. Now I'll move on to Korean case. Next, please. Main causes of particulate matter, fine dust, in Korea. In Korea, the fine dust issues are very serious. Main cause is coal power plants and use of fossil fuels in transportation. Compared to other advanced countries, Korea suffers from fine dust, and out of 100 OECD cities with high concentration of ultra-fine dust, Korea accounts for 61 of them. Korea must solve issues relating to greenhouse gas emissions, and the fine dust issues at the same time. Both of these issues are related to energy consumption. Next, please. The trend of greenhouse gas emissions in Korea. Looking at the trend of the greenhouse gas emissions of Korea, 2018 marked the highest in history, recording at 727 million tons. It is ninth largest one of the world, in the world. In 2019, it fell a little bit, 3.4% to 703 million tons. As you can see in the graph, the total emission in 1990, the left side, was only 300 million tons, but emissions have kept on rising since then. We suffered the IMF incident in 1997, so you can see emission decreased just 1 year due to the IMF crisis, but it rebounded from next year. Next page, please. This is about 2030 greenhouse gas mitigation target. Korea set a reduction target of 37% based on BAU, business as usual. By 2030, it will reach 851 million tons by 2030 on the basis of BAU. But we want to reduce to 536 million tons by 2030. A few days ago, the Minister of Environment of Korea announced this national target based on BAU approach was switched to fixed target approach. Most of the developed countries have the fixed target approach, and then ours will be 24.4% reduction by 2030 compared to 2017. I think because of this new goal, net zero, this intermediate target, 2030 target, should be readjusted. It's because we cannot reach 2050 net zero with this 2030 target. Next, please. This is about emission trading scheme. Emission trading scheme is in Europe is very popular, but in Asia is the first time. The Korea has to launch it for the first time. This emission trading scheme. We are entering into third phase already, from 2021 to 2025, 5 years plan. ETS, this emission trading scheme, means a trading of greenhouse gases emissions, trading of this emission credit, just like the stock exchange. So government set the emission cap of each company, and the companies can sell or buy the credits at the ETS market. This plan targets 681 large companies, and 73.5% of total national emissions are subject to the emission trading scheme. The emission trading scheme has undergone some stabilization period over the past 6 years, and the price of emission credits is constantly rising. As the emission standard increases, companies' efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will increase. In this year's third allowance allocation plan, starting from 2021, the paid allowance allocation rate was set at 10%, which means 90% allowance is free of charge. In Europe, 100% is paid allowance. They have to buy these credits at the market. Next, please. The role of NGO is important. This picture shows Greenpeace is shooting a laser beam on the wall of Samsung Electronics factory, saying there is a Korean in English, no more fossil fuels. Obviously, there is global trend we have to follow, right? Next, please. This is about RE100 initiative. There is an urgent need to improve the legal system so that the well-known RE, Renewable Energy 100, can also be applied in Korea. Currently, 250 global companies participate in the initiative to use 100% renewable energy from the company's electricity. As you can see, Apple, IKEA, BMW, eBay, Facebook, Panasonic, so many global companies already participated in this initiative. For example, company Apple requests all supply chain companies to change electricity to renewable energy. Apple says otherwise it will not buy the supplier's product. However, there are no Korean companies that have joined the RE100 initiative because Korean companies are legally unable to join RE100. Only recently, the government has proposed a plan to make this possible partially, and a bill related to RE100 has also been submitted in the National Assembly. I wonder how many companies in your country already participated in RE100 initiative. Okay, next, please. So I'm going to close my presentation, and then I would like to talk about youth. Youth is your future, right? Next, please. I'm going to talk about why the youth group or young generation important. Half of the global population, among 7.5 billion, 7.6 billion now, are under the age of 25. We can still say the world is very young. Future generation is our hope in many respects, right? There is a trend for people to be more and more nationalistic, less and less open to the need to understand that global challenges need global responses. But on the contrary, usually young people are more cosmopolitan, more internationalist, and more open. So new generations will be able to do what the present generation has not been able to do, to strengthen a democratic multilateral governance mechanism in order to allow for peace to prevail in the world. So you have the right to decide your future. Future world is the place you will live, right? Okay, next, please. So there are many UN agencies, around more than 50 UN special agencies under the UN headquarters that I have worked for 5 years. There are so many international agencies, not only UN, OECD, World Bank, IUCN, that I recently engaged. And then there are a lot of programs for the youth. You can visit the website to see how you can participate. Next pages, please. Yeah, as you can see, there are so many youth exchange, climate change, and lifestyles guidebook, youth exchange training kit on responsible consumption. There are so many UNFCCC and then many UN agencies have their own youth programs. Next, please. So this is the last page. So if you want to join international agency, first thing, is you have to have a dream, and then you have to have a capacity, such as expertise and language skill. Also, you need to be interested in global issues, right? When I was in the UN Office for Sustainable Development, I could see many university students as an intern in our office, and then many international university students are interested in international organizations. Yeah, there is nothing impossible. So you can knock all the time. So I hope to see everyone here play an important role at the global stage in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.